Godzilla is pretty cool. There's absolutely no secret I'm a Godzilla fan. Heck, my most popular video is a Godzilla meme for some reason. What's so great about this video? Please tell me. I don't get it. As a huge fan of Godzilla, I've watched a lot of the movies, have like 2 shirts, really want to get some of the figures, but most importantly, I've played a lot of Godzilla games. I've played a lot of Godzilla game. Only one of them. I haven't really played the others until now. But yeah, Godzilla games are a thing. They've been a thing since like the 80s, and they sure are interesting. That's for sure. I've decided I'd take a look at like most of the games I could find and see if any of them are actually worth something. Unfortunately, the answer to that is probably going to be probably not. So first off, starting in 1989 for the original NES is Godzilla Monster of Monsters. What kind of subtitle is that? Just call him King of Monsters at that point. Monster of Monsters just sounds dumb. Now, a lot of people might recognize this game. Not because of the game itself, but because of the creepypasta based on it. I've never read it. Apparently it's pretty good, besides the ending, but that's not the focus anyways. I can do my own creepypasta video. Now, this isn't the very first Godzilla game. There were a few in the early 80s on consoles that I barely heard of. But I'm just starting here because, I don't know how to emulate those consoles. So, how does NES Godzilla hold up? It's alright, I guess. When you start up the game, you get this really good 8-bit title theme. That's cool. But what's the intricate plot of this game? You know, the deep lore. Aliens. Aliens invade the Earth. Peak cinema, better than -1, literally Oscar worthy. So, starting the actual game, we get more banger music. And then we finally start the gameplay loop. Basically, you move around on this diagonal board thing, and then you play these 2D side-scrolling segments where you just kind of punch and kick stuff. It's not the greatest gameplay style. You can also do Atomic Breath. Just thought I'd put that here. It's just like a screen wave nuke thing. You can also play as Mothra, and it's just normal 2D auto-scroller controls. And you can do that. I have no idea what that is, but you can do it. Yeah, this game isn't that great. It has bosses too, and they're... yeah. So yeah, it's not great. I've played way better NES games, but it's fine enough for what it is. It also got a sequel, which is a tactical game where you control the military fighting against the monsters. I don't care for these type of games, so I got nothing to say about this besides the cover art is just a poster for the return of Godzilla. About 2 years before the NES sequel, a Godzilla game for Game Boy released called Godzilla. I mean, what did you expect? When we start the game up, we get this small little intro that doesn't really tell us anything. That's what manuals were for back then. Basically, the setup is that Godzilla's son, Manila, has been kidnapped by, like, every Godzilla monster from the Showa era. So we start a new game and... Okay, I generally really like the chibi art style for the sprites, but it's just really funny when you have the box art and the intro, and then you compare it to this. The game itself is a 2D puzzle game, mostly focusing on moving blocks using Godzilla's iconic ability, Big Fist. Within the levels, you get chased by a bunch of other monsters. They all die in one hit, except for Hedorah, because... I don't know. You can kill him with a rock, though. Overall, the game itself is pretty alright. I would complain that you can very easily soft-lock yourself with the puzzles, but the game lets you reset. What the... He just exploded! Why? Well, other than that, there's not much else to the game. Except for Ghidorah, who shows up if you take too long on a puzzle. Otherwise, I mean, that's it. It's a cute little puzzle game. It's not horrible. Definitely better than the NES duology. Also, if you use any form of turbo buttons, Godzilla just becomes an absolutely unstoppable force. Hey, that game was pretty alright. Now since we're properly in the 90s, we're moving on to consoles like the SNES. And maybe with the better hardware, they can finally feel confident enough to make a more substantial Godzilla experience. Plus, since Godzilla had a huge popularity resurgence in the early 90s, there were a lot more games, so there's a lot more chances to make something really good. Let's start with Super Godzilla. So how do they use the brand new power of the SNES? They make the most boring, tedious, miserable game I've ever played. The gameplay loop is that you control Godzilla as he walks around the city, very slowly. He can destroy a building, very slowly. He can also refill his health, very, very slowly. This is awful. It's pretty obvious, you barely do anything. Eventually you do find other monsters and the game enters this weird one-on-one battle system thing that is also bad. You basically walk up to the enemy and then pull back to release an attack, which the game doesn't explain well at all. Although even if it did, the game still sucks. The enemy AI is way too fast to fight against. The loop itself is just not fun. And the sprite work is, yeah, don't like it. Plus it runs on a live system. I think I could just stop playing this one now. Meanwhile, in Japan, they got Godzilla, insert Japanese subtitle here because I don't know Japanese, sorry. This game actually has some fans. And what do I think of it? It's okay. I kind of suck at it, and I could really use a training mode so I can figure out the moves without having the enemies completely dogpile me, but I'm sure it gets way more fun once you actually figure it out, because I've played other fighting games and the same things have happened there. Except those games had training modes. That's not all the Godzilla stuff released during the 4th generation of consoles. There was another Game Boy game, another fighting game for the Turbo Duo of all things, but besides those, I'm pretty sure that's it. But hey, the 5th gen is upon us with 3D games, and by 1998, Godzilla was getting its first American film. Sure, it wasn't good, but it was being marketed like crazy, so a video game is an obvious thing to make alongside the movie, and considering how popular the original PlayStation was back then, I'm sure they made something cool for it, right? The made-in-Japan only trading card battle game that no one talks about. I would say more about it, but this game is very text-heavy and I don't understand Japanese. I know, hold your shock. You know, I expected there to be way more for the OG PlayStation, but alas, all we got was that. Now, on the Dreamcast, we got 2 other games. Also Japanese exclusive because us smelly Americans don't deserve them. Also, they kind of had, like, poor critical reception, so, First off is Godzilla Generations, and no, this isn't a game about modern Godzilla and classic Godzilla running through iconic Godzilla locales to save their friends who have been captured by a time-eating monster. And no, that wasn't a very specific reference to a much more well-known game with the word Generations in its title. Godzilla Generations is a city destruction simulator. Yeah, you just kind of walk around and destroy stuff. It is boring. The most notable thing is, 1, it uses actual music from the old Godzilla movies, and 2, it has a bunch of unlockables, like 1998 Godzilla and even Dr. Serizawa from the first film. That's kind of cute. Despite not being well reviewed at all, Godzilla Generations got a sequel the following year called Godzilla Generations Maximum Impact, and it is actually pretty alright. It's a rail shooter where you basically just shoot at as many obstacles as you can. The main challenge is in the bosses, which can be a little annoying, but otherwise they're like, I don't know, okay. The Mechagodzilla and Mogera designs are really cool. Honestly, both of these should have just been arcade games. They fit that format way better, especially this one. They're super score focused, and I feel like the bare bones gameplay could be more excusable with an arcade format. So remember how I said the 1998 Godzilla movie probably would have had a game, and it didn't, besides the defunct online one? Yeah, I guess the TV show with the canceled toy line and the one that like no one watched was just begging for not just 1, but 2 games for the Game Boy Color. The Godzilla the series starts with an intense cutscene. I mean, just look at this! Anyways, we start the gameplay and it's a 2D side-scrolling rail shooter with no reticle and no music. I'm not joking. Look at this. It's boring because obvious, but it also got a sequel which added a reticle and let you stop Godzilla in place and make him stomp, but it's still the same boring thing. You know, I'm really starting to lose hope that there are any really good Godzilla games. In 2002, we got Godzilla Domination on the GBA, and it's good. Really good. It's a fighting game where you roam around these small arenas and try to take out the other monsters. That's right, it's another fighting game. Haven't had one of those in a while. It's very simple, but there's just enough stuff thrown in to stop it from being boring, like little power-ups, although one of them disables your ability to attack, and that's not good, and super moves. Godzilla Domination is just pretty dumb fun. The only complaints I have is that the character roster is kind of small, and this is minor, but I kind of hate this Godzilla design. I just really hate the designs that make him this super bright green. It just makes him look like a boring dinosaur. The Marvel version is a very good example of that. The Japanese version actually changed this, so now Godzilla is in his proper color scheme. And also, Mechagodzilla got replaced by Kiryu because his movie just came out. But anyways, Godzilla Domination is great. The music rocks. It was made by the same people that made Shantae of all things. And there's a hot newswoman. What more could you want? Besides a better character roster. You know, a console counterpart for this game would be really cool. So in 2002, alongside Domination, we got Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, published by Atari and developed by Pipeworks. I kind of love this game. It's a lot more of a traditional fighting game than Domination, a lot closer to that SNES game. It does stand out though. It's got unique mechanics like the atomic breath or being able to pick up and throw buildings. Graphically, for 2002, it actually looks pretty good. Sure, the CGI humans look, yeah, bad, but the monsters themselves look pretty well modeled and pretty accurate. Except Rodan, for some reason he's a completely wrong color. He's supposed to be red. The character roster is pretty good. Not very big, but there's way more interesting monsters like Destroya or even Mecha King Ghidorah. There's actually 2 Godzillas in this game. The designs from the 90s movies, and then the one from Godzilla 2000, which just so happens to be my favorite design of him. Now, this game ain't perfect at all. The mapping for the grab is 2 buttons at once because the GameCube doesn't have enough buttons for a dedicated grab button, along with this mechanic called Rage, which is basically super attacks, but the game never tells you the button combo for this, so it's a little annoying to figure out. This is probably where the manual came in handy. Another weird thing is that every monster has a special attack, except Godzilla for some reason. Another criticism is that while the character roster is good, for some reason some characters like Mothra aren't included. She's relegated to more of a assist mechanic, which, of all names, is called Mothra Airstrike, which is a beautiful name. What else is there to say about this game? Well, there's a story mode, which is aliens again. Yeah, that's it. At the end of the arcade mode, you fight Mechagodzilla, but not the actual version of Mechagodzilla that's controlled by the aliens, which is the 70s version, but the 90s version that was built by humans to protect against Godzilla, which kind of sucks because the 90s Mechagodzilla design sucks compared to the 70s design. Also, he's annoying. In the Japanese version, Mechagodzilla was replaced by his 2002 design, which is just the objective best one, and this was added to the Xbox version of the game, which I would emulate, but like, every Xbox emulator on my computer is kind of trash, so honestly, if there was like a sequel to this game that refined some of the flaws and expanded it, it'd be super cool. Oh yeah! 2 years later for the Xbox and PS2, we got Godzilla Save the Earth. Not for the GameCube though. You Nintendo fans know what you did. This is my favorite Godzilla game. starting off with a much better intro. We get way more characters like Mothra, Baragon, Space Godzilla, and even Mothra of all characters. The combat itself just feels way more fluid and quick. They reduce the amount characters fly back, so you can do stuff like this. Beam struggles have been added, and you can catch buildings that are thrown at you. Now, it isn't perfect at all. The graphics are, for some reason, way worse than the previous. I don't know if it's just because the PS2 is a little less powerful than the other two systems of this generation, but it just looks awful. Specifically, Godzilla 2000 and Mechagodzilla got done pretty dirty. Godzilla 2000 barely even looks like himself, and Mechagodzilla 2 doesn't even have eyes. Also, one of the parts of the arcade mode is collecting G-cells, and they're just really unneeded. They're super annoying to get, and especially if they're stuck in buildings. Also, there are these stupid TPS minigames that don't really work with how the game controls. Also, this was an issue in the previous game, but you randomly get attacked by military vehicles and can get frozen by them, and it just kind of interrupts the fights. Kind of reminds me of that one Transformers game I did a video on back in May. Despite that, the game's still pretty great, and maybe another sequel could make it even better. Or worse! In 2007, Godzilla Unleashed came out on the Wii. It is very, very mid. Let's start with the positives first. The graphics are actually pretty nice, even if for some reason Dolphin decided to put some sort of darkened filter over the screen. Godzilla 2000 actually somewhat looks like Godzilla 2000. There are way more new characters, and they're actually pretty cool. You got characters like Biolante, who was supposed to be in Save the Earth, but got cut. The original Mechagodzilla finally got added in, and 2 original monsters. But then you try and play it, and it's not awful, but I just don't like the motion control integration. It just kind of loses the ease of the previous 2 games. Honestly, it would have been better if it was made for, like, PS3 or something. Now, there is a PS2 version, but it's literally just a worse version of Save the Earth with only 2 of the new characters. Oh, and there's a DS version that's something completely different. It's alright. It's a fine auto-scrolling side-scroller thingy. Eh. And then no Godzilla games were made again. Until 2014, when we got a game for the PS4. Let me just go on Amazon and see how much... Oh. Well, that kind of sucked. Is there any other kaiju that could provide me with a good gaming experience? Oh my goodness, it's Gamera from hit 1995 movie Gamera Guardian of the Universe. And he has his own games? What? Only 3 and they're Japanese exclusive? Get out of here! Well, Gamera for Game Boy. Let's go, as they say in Paris. First off, the title theme sounds weird. The game opens with Gamera fighting against Gyaos, and we eventually start the first battle. The battle system is this odd button combo turn-based battle system, and I do not care for it. It's too RNG based, and you can't reliably tell if your attack will hit or not when you enter the combo, because they can just, fly right over into the air, and you can't do anything about it. With most normal turn-based battle systems, you can be reliant on certain things like items or super attacks, and you'll know they land. But Gamera for Game Boy just doesn't do that. The game's not that great, which kinda sucks. Then there's Gamera for SNES and... oh, I can't read that. Well, it seems to be another strategy game, so I probably wouldn't be able to fairly judge it anyway, since I don't care for those type of games. Okay, so far these Gamera games seem to be kind of disappointing. So how about Gamera 2000? Well, already it's called 2000 when it was actually released in 1997. So automatically it's got false advertisement on the box. Starting up, we learned the game was made by Virgin Interactive. Now, I will act like a mature adult man and wait, I'm 17, I don't have to be mature about this. We then get live action cutscenes with very Resident Evil 1 English acting.
According to the data, the fighters seem to consist of cells that contain genes very similar to Gal's DNA.
The story is, I didn't pay attention, oops. After the first cutscene, we get this point and click section that just feels like an old educational PC game. It even has those interactable things that just make weird noise for no reason. When we start the gameplay, it's an actually pretty fun rail shooter. It's kind of like Star Fox, but it allows you to shoot to your side and behind you too. The only big complaint I have is that you don't play as Gamera himself and simply just command him, but it's otherwise pretty good. Well, that ended pretty well. Sure, most of the games were just meh, but they're licensed games. Of course, most of them are going to be half-baked. It's amazing we got something amazing as Save the Earth. Heck, most of these games weren't even bad. They were just mediocre. Except for Super Godzilla. And even if no official Godzilla games are going to be made anymore, there's still fan-made stuff. So overall, this was fun. Guys, I don't have a funny joke to end on. What do I do?